Hi, everyone. It's good to be with you again today. I got that problem with the light again, except this time it's not a lamp. It's like the actual stuff from outside. The sun. Yeah, the stuff from outside. That's usually called the sun. Um, let me, what can I do here to make that not be like that? Let me see if I can't get this computer over to a different spot. If I can, then I will unplug this and I'll plug it in over there against the wall or something. Or not against the wall, against like over here. There we go. This is so much better for recording. It's probably not good for my computer to do what I just did there. But let me see here. Okay, yes, that's much better. And now we got Galaxy here. Say hi, Galaxy. Hang on one moment. I wasn't planning on doing this. This is the fun thing about recording live. You never know exactly what's going to happen because I didn't plan this out and I just saw how much this needed to be moved. And so now I'm going to go about trying to do that. So, excuse me for 1 minute here. While I plug this in so that my battery doesn't die in the middle of it. Because that would be terrible if that happened. I hope you're all doing well today. I'm glad to be here doing this again. As you saw from the title of this, I'm going to be talking about today is Israel's 73rd birthday. Well, actually, it's technically not because it's thousands of years old because the Bible, it goes back to like the days of the Bible and King David and Abraham and all that. So it actually is much older than 73 years old. But that's the modern state of Israel is 73 years old. Excuse me for 1 minute while I get down here and plug in my computer so it doesn't die. And then I will commence with what I was getting ready to tell you. Hang on one moment here while I had to avoid a wardrobe malfunction there too. My name isn't Janet Jackson and this isn't 1990 whatever that was when that happened. Hang on one moment here. Just got to get underneath this table and plug in my computer. Somebody thought it was a brilliant idea to plug this, to get this stupid box under here or over here, and then get all this crap. I've just, in case anybody's watching this who doesn't know me, I just moved here. And so I've got this huge box that has a cat playground thing or whatever you call those things. The things that they climb on and all that. Got this in my way. So that I can't reach the outlet. And there we go. And it's so heavy that I can't move it, having this cat carrier thing here. So when I'm down here and I'm trying to plug in my computer and all that, I picked the worst possible place to put this stupid thing. And so then I'm over here like banging my head on the box and whatever. And now I got Ginger and running over the top of my computer. I'll be lucky if this computer survive the next however long I'm doing this, the way these cats just think they can run all over and do whatever they want. Of course, I guess that's my fault because I don't have the squirt bottle, so I can spray them in the face for being like that. But anyway, okay, now let's try this again, shall we? Okay, hi everybody. 5 minutes into this, I'm finally ready to start talking. This is great. Okay, so Israel's 73rd birthday. The modern state of Israel is 73 years old as of today. And was born on May 14th, 1948. And this is May 14th, 2021. So I decided that it might be a fun thing to do to talk a little bit about the history of the modern state of Israel. And so what we're going to do is, I have many books on this subject. I have many books on a lot of subjects because I read a lot, both print books over here behind me and ebooks. And so one of the books I have was originally done by Pastor John Hagee of Cornerstone Church in San Antonio, Texas. It's called Jerusalem Countdown. I think it was originally released, I'm not 100% sure about this, but I think it was 2007. It might have been 2005, but I think it was 2007. And then there was a revised and updated version in 2013, which is the copy that I currently have. And one of the chapters in there is chapter 10 of the book, and it's called Jerusalem Regains Independence. Now, so he goes into, in this chapter, he goes into everything about, Jerusalem and, like it says, Jerusalem regaining independence. But he starts by talking about Israel regaining its independence, since Jerusalem is the capital of Israel. And because of what today is, I thought that I would take the opening of this, and that's the reason for the title, and talk a little bit about the history of Israel and how the modern state of Israel came to be. I'm not going to go through the entire history of Israel because that would take hours and hours, and this is live recording. I'm going to have to use the bathroom at some time. So I don't have hours and hours to kill going through the entire history of Israel. Not to mention I might get hungry sometime today, and I would like to be able to eat also. But anyway, so here we go. Let me make sure this is plugged in. I just went through all that trouble plugging this into the wall, and it would be the height of dumbness for me to go through all that effort to plug this in and then not have it plug and then not actually plug it in after I've gone through all that trouble to put it in the wall. Okay, can everybody see me? You can. Great. All right, here we go. I just wanted to read a little bit of this chapter. Again, this is chapter 10 of Jerusalem Countdown, revised and updated, by Pastor John Hagee. And I'm just going to read up to the point where up through the point where it's talking about the independence of Israel. So here we go. He starts off by saying, the Jews of Palestine lived under the confines of the Balfour Declaration in what became known as the British Mandate, the Palestine Mandate of the League of Nations, from 1917 until 1948. The Balfour Declaration, a letter to Lord Rothschild by British Foreign Secretary Arthur James Balfour, written November 2nd, 1917, became the basis movement to create a Jewish state in Palestine. The British Mandate, introduced July 24th, 1922, was far more partial to the Arabs living in Palestine than it was to the Jewish people. In truth, the British Mandate wanted to give the Jewish people a home without giving them the right of self-determination while living in the promised land of their fathers. So basically, wanted to put them back, almost sounds like it wanted to put them back under occupation, is what it sounds like to me. I don't know if that's exactly, that's how I would That's almost what that sounds like. I'm continuing to read now. The escalating conflict between the Arabs and Jews in Palestine and the devastating rise of Hitler's Holocaust in Europe caused many Jews to try to flee for safety. Hitler was killing up to 20,000 Jews per day in the Nazi death camps, and the terrified Jews came scrambling to Palestine, some in decrepit ships by sea, and others walking long miles through Europe after selling every possession they had to reach the promised land. Others attempted to flee to Britain or other allied countries. Many never made it to safety. In his captivating book, The Revolt, former Israeli Prime Minister Menachem Begin described how the British Army captured Jews during the time of the British Mandate and sent them to Europe, where Hitler promptly killed them in the Holocaust. In 1922, after significant conflict between Jews and Arabs in Palestine, Winston Churchill set forth his government's revised positions in his White Paper of June 1922. While Churchill did not explicitly oppose the goal of a Jewish state, his statement was interpreted as a setback to the Zionist movement. Unauthorized statements have been made to the effect that the purpose in view is to create a wholly Jewish Palestine, wrote Churchill. Phrases have been used such as that Palestine is to become as Jewish as England is English. His Majesty's government regard any such expectations as impracticable and have no such aim in view. The British White Paper policy limited Jewish immigration into Israel to escape Hitler's Holocaust in Europe. It allowed only 5,000 Jewish immigrants per year to immigrate into Palestine. Because they could not legally enter Palestine without proper documentation, and because the 5,000 permits that were legally given by the British Mandate were virtually instantly gone, most Jews were considered illegal immigrants by the British and were rounded up in large numbers and sent back by ship to Hitler and the death camps. So the British really helped to, in some ways, contribute to the very Holocaust that they later helped stop. That wasn't his commentary, that was mine. It was at this time that Menachem Begin walked onto the stage of Israel's history. Begin had been the leader of a Jewish youth organization in Poland and was thrown into prison by the Russians, where he was put into solitary confinement for months. Every day he was grilled by Soviet intelligence officers for all information concerning his activities and associations with his Zionist organization. In the fiery trials of persecution, like Joseph in Egypt, Menachem Begin's backbone became steel, and his courage became that of a young lion. After years of incarceration, Menachem Begin was released, and he went immediately to Palestine. Upon his arrival, Begin organized the Irgun, an underground military force for the purpose of preventing the British from sending Jews without papers back to Hitler's Holocaust in Europe. The daring exploits of the Irgun are well documented in Menachem Begin's book, The Revolt. Begin became such a severe thorn in the side of the British that Great Britain placed a price on his head of $100,000, dead or alive. On one occasion, British officers sat in his house with his wife Eliza for several days, waiting for, quote-unquote, the terrorists to come home. Begin was hiding all the time behind the fireplace in a cavity he had previously created. By removing a few bricks, he walked into the cavity. The bricks were replaced, and he stood waiting for the British intelligence officers to leave. They did, after 3 days and nights. Begin stood there night and day waiting for the British to leave his house while they sat on the same couch as his wife. Under the leadership of Menachem Begin, the Irgun manufactured several unique weapons in the defense of Jews being deported back to Europe. One was a delayed percussion bomb designed by the Irgun to cut trains in half at the coal car without injuring the Jews being carried back to Europe. The bomb was placed on the railroad track, When the locomotive ran over the bomb, the explosion was delayed until the locomotive passed over the bomb. It detonated at the coal car, severing the train like a massive axe. The locomotive engine would sail down the track while the train quickly came to a halt. Menachem Begin's Ergun then leaped on the train and liberated all Jews who were being deported to Europe. The truth about the King David Hotel needs to be told. Menachem Begin is often labeled by the liberal media as a terrorist. Nothing could be further from the truth. Menachem Begin was a freedom fighter whose targets always consisted of British military personnel or those who were armed combatants against the Jewish people. In July of 1946, the King David Hotel was being used by the British Army as a command post. British troops invaded the Jewish agency in June 1946 and confiscated large quantities of documents. Information about Jewish agency operations, including intelligence activities in Arab countries, was taken to the King David Hotel. After news of a massacre of 40 Jews in Poland reached him, Begin and the Ergun placed explosives from the basement through the top floors of the King David Hotel. Desiring to avoid civilian casualties, Begin placed 3 telephone calls, one to the hotel, another to the French consulate, and a third to the Palestine Post, warning that explosives in the King David Hotel would soon be detonated. The call to the hotel was apparently received and ignored. The commanding officer did not believe that the Ergun could have possibly placed the explosives in the hotel under the noses of the British High Command. The commanding officer made it very plain to Begin he had no intention of leaving the hotel, saying, "We don't take orders from the Jews." The King David Hotel was exploded, and a total of 91 people were killed and 45 injured. Among the casualties were 15 Jews. The bombing of the King David Hotel was not an act of terrorism, it was an act of combat between warring forces. Shortly thereafter, England decided to leave Palestine, and the Jewish state was born. Mr. Begin and the Ergun laid down their arms along with Haganah upon the rebirth of the Jewish state on May 14, 1948. Aware that 7 Arab states under the leadership of former Nazi and British officers were about to attack them, the Jews of Palestine declared the establishment of the State of Israel on May 14, 1948 at 4:32 p.m. in a moving ceremony at the Tel Aviv Museum. The new Prime Minister, David Ben-Gurion, declared, "We hereby proclaim the establishment of the Jewish state in Palestine, to be called Israel." The 650,000 members of the Jewish community in Palestine were thrilled at the possibility of establishing the first Jewish state in more than 1,800 years. These same Jewish people anguished over the fact that 7 Arab armies were preparing to attempt to slaughter them in an effort to murder the Jewish state in the birth canal. The international community began discussing a Jewish state following the revelation of the horrors of the Holocaust in 1947. As a part of the Palestine Mandate in the British White Paper of 1922, a large section of land east of the Jordan River called Transjordan was offered to the Jews of the world. The Arabs so vigorously protested the land grant to the Jews that 4/5 of the property was given to the Arabs, and 1/5 was given to the Jews. It was Israel's first land for peace offering, and it miserably failed, as have all others that have been made or to gain a momentary peace. The organizers of the ceremony for the recognition of Israel developed the plans under extremely tight secrecy, which was crucial. Israel knew that if any word about the plans leaked out, giving critical information as to when this historic occasion would occur, the Arabs would immediately either place a bomb on the site or plan an attack during the event. But on May 14th, the morning newspapers announced that the event would take place at 4 p.m. The Jewish people of Tel Aviv were so excited that they placed the blue and white flags of Israel outside their homes. In order to preserve secrecy and safety, only a small audience was invited to the event. Foreign journalists were barred from the historic meeting. When the National Council met at 1 p.m., the members still could not agree on the wording to be used in the Proclamation of Statehood. In their book, Great Moments in Jewish History, Eleanor and Robert Slater described this meeting. Some demanded that it spell out the new state's frontiers. Ben-Gurion said no. Observant Jews wanted a reference to the God of Israel. Secularists balked. Compromising, Ben-Gurion decided that the word rock would appear instead of God. What about a name for the new state? How about Judea, suggested one member. How about Zion, proposed another. Again, Ben-Gurion broke the impasse. The new state would be called Israel. Just before 4 p.m., limousines began arriving at the Tel Aviv Museum, causing the crowd that had gathered to break into wild cheering. The last council member to enter the museum was Ben-Gurion, all 5 feet 3 inches of him. His craggy face, fringed with strands of white hair, bore little expression. Now we are responsible for our own destiny, he thought to himself. 350 invitees had crowded into the museum, packing the room with people. Ben-Gurion and 10 other members of the cabinet were seated at a table under a portrait of Zionist pioneer Theodore Herzl. Thousands of new Israelis were listening to the ceremony via radio broadcast. At 4 p.m., Ben-Gurion rapped his walnut gavel 3 times, and the crowd sang the national anthem. Then Ben-Gurion declared, "I shall now read to you the scroll of the establishment of the state, which has passed in the first reading by the National Council." Ben-Gurion raised his voice when he read. Accordingly, we, the members of the National Council, representing the Jewish people in Palestine and the world Zionist movement, are met together in solemn assembly today, the day of termination of the British mandate for Palestine, and by virtue of the natural and historic right of the Jewish people and the resolution of the General Assembly of the United Nations, we hereby proclaim the establishment of the Jewish state in Palestine, to be called the State of Israel. With those words, the crowd inside the hall went wild. Some applauded, some shouted, some cried. Everyone smiled. It had taken Ben-Gurion 17 minutes to read the 979-word document. Ben-Gurion then announced the first decree of the new Jewish state. The British White Paper of 1939, hated by the Jews for its curbs on Jewish immigration and land sales, was made null and void. Council members then signed the Declaration of Independence. The Palestine Philharmonic Orchestra played the national anthem as the new Prime Minister, David Ben-Gurion, declared, "The State of Israel is established. The meeting is ended." This momentous occasion had been recorded by the pen of the prophet Isaiah, saying, "A nation shall be born in a day." See Isaiah 66:8 for that prophecy. God did it just as he promised. It was the greatest moment in prophetic history of the 20th century. It was living evidence for all men to see that the God of Israel was alive and well. Despite pressure from the U.S. State Department not to recognize Israel, lest America offend Arab oil-producing nations, President Harry S. Truman was the first to recognize the State of Israel on May 14, 1948, much like how Trump was discouraged from recognizing Jerusalem as Israel's capital, but 70 years later, and was pressured by the State Department and diplomats and so on and so forth not to do that, yet he did. Years after the State of Israel was founded, David Ben-Gurion met with President Truman. Ben-Gurion noted, I told him his courageous decision to recognize our new state so quickly and his steadfast support since then had given him an immortal place in Jewish history. As I said that, tears suddenly came to his eyes, and his eyes were still wet when he bade me goodbye. Later, a correspondent came up to me to ask, why was President Truman in tears when he left you? History records that Harry Truman was a man of utmost integrity and highly principled. His word was his bond. He was a fierce political competitor whose fiery rhetoric in the campaign against Dewey for the office of President of the United States in 1948 was labeled, "Give 'em hell, Harry." His response was, "I don't have to give them hell. I just tell the truth, and it sounds like hell." Raised in a Bible-believing Zionist home, Truman helped various Jewish family immigrants to come to America to escape the Holocaust. When the hour came for Jehovah God to breathe life into a Zionist state that had lain dead for nearly 2,000 years, the Almighty had a man of honor and integrity in the White House, courageous enough to ignore the political experts around him and to recognize the state of Israel. May God bless the soul and sacred memory of Harry S. Truman. I almost said Herod. Man, would that have been a mistake. May God bless the soul and sacred memory of Harry S. Truman, 33rd President of the United States of America. And that's the end of the section on the Jewish independence from May 14th, 1948, which we celebrate on its 73rd anniversary today. So I just wanted to share that with all of you. And there's a couple of other things I wanted to talk about, as well as continuing our Genesis study. We started talking about Joseph a couple of podcasts ago, and then yesterday I did I did a background on Joseph's family from Genesis 37, and I wanted to take some time and go through the notes of that while Galaxy rubs herself up against the computer. Hi, Galaxy. Do you want to come say hi to everybody? Do you just want to put your head in the camera? Huh? Come on. Come here, Galaxy. Come here. Come here, Galaxy. You don't want to come say hi to everybody? Well, I'm going to go get a mint for my throat, and then I'm going to come back and talk some more. Before I get let me get my Genesis notes over here too, by the way. I'll get those real quick. From the Preset Ministries study. So let me grab a mint here for my throat. What you doing, Galaxy? I don't know what time the Cubs play today. I'm a lifelong Cubs fan, and I watch all your games. I'm also a basketball fan, but I haven't watched much basketball this season. I'm not boycotting it or protesting it or all that, even though I don't like the message and the agenda being put forth by the NBA and really all professional sports leagues right now. I don't support any of that, but I am a big basketball fan. I'm kind of another thing I'm kind of annoyed about with the NBA in particular, but really basketball in general, is this whole thing about my hat's crooked. There we go. There's so many. The NBA now is really just. It's almost just a 48-minute three-point shooting contest. Is really all the NBA is. I mean, the guys go dribble down the court. and all they're really doing is either taking the 3-point shot or trying to get open in order to take one. I mean, there's so much of the offense now is just centered around the 3-point basket. And I noticed this yesterday. What made me want to talk about this when I saw this last night was the score of the Pacers game. I think the Pacers lost last night. I forgot who they were playing, but I think their opponents had like 148 points or something like that. That would have been unheard of back in the 90s or whatever, or before, for the most part. I mean, 150 points, that's ridiculous. And it's not that I enjoy, who doesn't enjoy a good 3-point basket, especially one that's timely and one that is one that is just exciting. I mean, the 3-point basket's great. It was a nice addition to the game of basketball to have the 3-point basket. But teams have become so dependent on it and reliant on it that we don't get a lot of the inside game that we used to. We don't get a lot, strategy and different, everybody's using the same strategy: shoot the three, defend against the three. There's not as much, different styles being presented from different teams like there used to be. And I feel like the game of basketball, the gameplay itself, is suffering because of it. And, one proposal I read last night talked about limiting the number of 3-point baskets so that that a team could take in a game. Like, you only had so many 3-point baskets, you could take like 20 or whatever, and only 23-point attempts. And then you had to go 2-pointers the rest of the way. I'm personally, I would like to see a total reversal of the clock where it's gotten so bad, the 3-point basket, as much as I like the 3-point shot, it's gotten where teams are so dependent on it that I would almost favor getting rid of it altogether and going back to the days where we just had the 2-point basket. But anyway, this has nothing to do with Israel or Genesis or anything else. I noticed that yesterday, and I was talking about the Cubs, and then I thought, well, let me mention this other little thing I have about basketball here. But okay, Genesis 37 is where we were, and we're gonna begin reading today from Genesis chapter 37, verses 5 through 11. We're gonna go through this chapter step by step. We might do it on more than one video. I don't know. Hang on 1 minute here. Genesis 37, 5 through 11. All right. Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him all the more. We saw in the previous 4 verses that his brothers already hated him. I mean, they were already jealous of him, and they hated him. And because their father loved Joseph more than he did the rest of them. Because he was, we'll get into this as we read the text. Joseph had a dream, and when he told his brothers, they hated him all the more. He said to them, "Listen to this dream I had. We were binding sheaves of grain out in the field when suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright, while your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed down to it." His brothers said to him, "Do you intend to reign over us? Will you actually rule us?" And they hated him all the more because of his dream and what he had said. Then he had another dream, and he told it to his brothers. "Listen," he said, "I had another dream, and this time the sun and moon and 11 stars were bowing down to me." when he told his father as well as his brothers. His father rebuked him and said, "What is this dream you had? Will your mother and I and your brothers actually come and bow down to the ground before you?" His brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the matter in mind. So, what does this chapter say about the people involved? Well, first let's observe the people involved. It talks about Joseph, it talks about his 11 brothers, and it also talks about Jacob. And what does it say about them? Well, Joseph, of course, he has this dream where sheaves of grain are being bound, and Joseph's sheaves stand upright while the others bow down. And then he has this other dream where the sun and moon and 11 stars were bowing down to Joseph. 11 stars, he has 11 brothers. The sun and the moon, I suppose, could represent Jacob and Rachel. And so his brothers, it says, hated him. And we're like, will you reign over us? And they say this kind of an indignant manner. Will you reign over us? And they're incredulous about it. Even Jacob, his father, and even though Joseph was Jacob's favorite, even he is kind of taken aback by this and rebukes Joseph. And so those are the people involved here. And the next question here says, in one or two short sentences, summarize what this paragraph is all about. So I wrote here, Joseph was given a dream from God about the future. His brothers hated and resented him because of it. And to be fair to them, again, like I said yesterday, this is kind of understandable. Because Joseph, think about it. He is his father's favorite. His father makes that plainly known to all of them, that Joseph is his favorite. That's going to create natural resentment, and rightly so. To have your father so openly love your sibling more than you, or to elevate one over the rest of you. And he basically, Jacob, obviously he didn't mean to do this, but Jacob cultivated the very environment for the actions that took place later throughout the rest of Genesis about Joseph. He basically created an environment where that was more likely to happen. So I understand their resentment. I do. I kind of feel for them in a way. Because of what Jacob did. Joseph he kind of sounds arrogant here. When's the last time somebody came up to you and went, "Hey, I had a dream from God that you guys are all going to bow down to me one day and I'm going to reign over you"? How would you respond to that? I got a word from the Lord for you, brother. You're going to serve me one day and bow down to me, and I'm going to rule over you. Oh, well, that's great. And they already had this resentment built up and growing inside of them. So this had to sound very arrogant, very condescending, kind of like, well, who do you think you are? Kind of thing. I really get where the brothers are coming from here. I don't agree with or support what they did, but I get why they feel like they do. And I think their feelings are justified. I don't believe, you hear this sometimes, well, all feelings are valid. No, they aren't. All feelings are not valid. In this case, I feel like his brother's feelings were valid and were justified. If you're wondering what I'm looking at over here, Gabby keeps getting. I'm keeping an eye on Gabby because I don't know what she's doing, but I'm a little suspicious of it. Yeah, I'm a little suspicious of you, kitty. I don't know what you're doing over there. But anyway, so even Jacob notices that this is, like I said before, even Jacob notices that there's something a little off about this. We're going to bow down to you? What? This is, and then he gives this prophecy about the future where his father and his brothers are going to bow down to him. And what this shows, this whole thing about prophecy, it shows that God knows all. God knows every detail of the future. He's omniscient. He knows everything about the past, everything about our present, and everything about the future from our perspective. He knows everything. He knows everything, past, present, future. But, and this is where I think some people get this wrong or mess it up. Just because God knows the future doesn't mean that God is causing it all to happen. Doesn't mean that God is, I'm trying to say, it doesn't mean that we're all a bunch of puppets with no free will or no say of our own, and God is just manipulating us and playing with us like we're toys or puppets, and we have no say in the matter. We have no will of our own. That's not the God of the Bible. That's not what the Bible teaches. A lot of people can't understand this or wrap their minds around it. But God's foreknowledge, in other words, God's knowing something in advance, doesn't mean that he's forcing it or causing it to happen. For example, God told Adam and Eve not to eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. He knew when he gave them that command that they would eventually eat from that tree. He can see into the future. He knows all things. So he knew what was going to happen. Does that mean that God gave them a command and then forced them to violate it? No. Just because God knew they were going to do something doesn't mean that he forced them to do it. It doesn't mean he caused it. I would, John Hagee, the same pastor who wrote that book, Jerusalem Countdown, with the chapter that I read at the beginning, or part of that chapter. He did a sermon one time called, it was in a sermon series called The Lord's Prayer. And one of the sermons he did was called, Does God Have Two Wills? And the answer, of course, was yes. His, let me see, how did he put that? His perfect will, or not his perfect will. His, he has his permissive will, and then he has his other will. Though he has two, God has two wills. I can't remember the other one right now off the top of my head. But God has the will that says of what he intends, and then there's the will that he allows. So God intended for Adam and Eve when he created them, God's will for them God's will for Adam and Eve was to never eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, to only eat from the tree of life, and to live forever in their perfect, sinless state, and to be fruitful and multiply as God commanded, and enjoy fellowship with him for eternity. That's what God's will was. God's permissive will was that he would give them free choice, and that he would permit them to violate his commands, to reject him, and to listen to the serpent instead. So that's God's will, God's permissive will. Two separate things sometimes. God will permit, for another example, 2 Peter 3:9. God is not willing that any should perish, but that all should come to repentance. Most people, though, are not coming to repentance. If you read Matthew 7:13 and 14, Jesus says that the road is narrow that leads to life, and only a few will find it. But the road is broad that leads to destruction, and many enter that way. Many people enter the broad way that leads to hell, into destruction. Does that mean that's what God wants? No. Is God forcing people to go there? No. God gave you free choice. When I'm born, he knows what choice I'm going to make, but his knowledge of it, his foreknowledge of it, does not mean that he is causing it or forcing it to happen. The very nature of free choice necessitates the possibility that the ones that you're creating are going to choose against you. God's knowledge in advance that they're going to do that doesn't negate the fact that he's still allowing them to choose it, and it doesn't negate their responsibility for their own choices. I hope I'm making that clear. As clear as it sounds in my head. According to the text, how did Joseph's brothers feel about him? Or to put it another way, what words in the text describe their feelings? Well, it's obvious. It says 2 times that they hated Joseph because of what he was saying. And then another time it says that they were jealous. So 2 times just in these verses, Genesis 37, 5-11, it says that his brothers hated him. And then one time it says that they're jealous just in those verses alone. The next question here says, mark every occurrence of hatred in Genesis 37, 3-11. And when I do that, you see that it says that the brothers hated Joseph because Jacob loves him more than them. And they hated him because of his dreams that said that they would all bow down to him. And the next question says, now did you notice any other important word that was repeated several times that helps you understand what the text is all about? I did not. I did not get the point that they were trying to get at there. And then it says, as you observe the text, give special attention to Joseph's dreams. You will want to see and answer the following. What Joseph dreamed, and we've already talked about this somewhat. The sheaves and the luminaries bowing down to Joseph, representing his family. and how they would all bow down to him later in his life. What did the brothers understand the dream to mean? Well, of course, they understood it to mean that he would rule and reign over them. And that's understandable because that's exactly what the dream meant. And as we will see later in Genesis, that's exactly what happened. Hang on one moment here. Okay, there's no way to pause this while I'm recording. Let me see here. What is my next thing? What Joseph's father understood the dream to mean and what he did with this information. First of all, again, we see the hatred and jealousy of his brothers. Jacob, on the other hand, he doesn't turn on his son and begin to hate him or be jealous of him like his other sons are. He rebukes Joseph for saying the dream. He doesn't rebuke the dream. He rebukes Joseph. It could be that he rebukes him for saying it. But you can tell that the dream had an impact on Jacob because it says that he kept the matter in mind. In other words, he didn't let it get to him. He kept the matter in mind, meaning he pondered it. He thought of it. It kind of reminds me of the wording of Mary when it says that Mary pondered all these things in her heart. That's what I think of when I read this wording about Jacob here and what that means and what that says. Gosh, there's so much more here, and I'm already approaching the 1 hour mark of this. We'll get through as much of this as we can. Actually, let me see. What do I want to do here? Do I want to continue going here or not? I think what I'm going to do, because I've spent some time talking about the independence of Israel and everything, I'm going to stop here for now, and then we will pick up with Genesis chapter 37, verses 12 through 17, and the rest of the chapter in my next video. Normally, I only record one video a day, but because I really wanted to get through the rest of Genesis 37 today, what I might do, I'm either going to not make another video today, or I might wait a few hours and then make another one later this evening, and go through just the rest of Genesis 37. Because this is where my notes stopped. I thought I answered the rest of the questions here for this study, but it turns out I did not. And I could just read them as we go and answer them, because that's what I often do. But I don't think I'm going to do that this time. I think I'm going to stop here. This video is already about 53 minutes long. So I'm going to stop here, and I will pick this up next time, and we're going to go through the rest of Genesis 37 here. I might recap what I just did too. I don't know yet, but anyway, so I'm going to stop here for now, and whether I pick this up again later today or tomorrow, we will continue and finish Genesis chapter 37 soon, whether it's later tonight or tomorrow. So thank you very much for watching. This has been Steve Johnson for the Wisdom on Wheels program here on YouTube, and we will talk to you later. Bye-bye.